Welcome, or hopefully welcome back, to another episode of the Reliability Matters podcast. For those of you who are counting, and I know you are, this is episode number 143. We've discussed the silver tsunami on this show numerous times, the unprecedented rate of which employees are retiring. When engineers and other employees retire from companies, they take with them more than just a set of gold cufflinks or an engraved plaque. In many cases, they also take with them wisdom and knowledge. Perhaps this is never more true than in the case of my guest today. And who is that? My friend and colleague, Doug Pauls. Doug Pauls holds a BA in Chemistry and Physics from Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He worked 9 years for the Navy, 8 years as Technical Director of Contamination Studies Laboratories, now known as Foresight, and more than 20 years at Rockwell Collins, now Collins Aerospace, in the Advanced Operations Engineering Group, where he is a technical fellow and a principal material and process engineer. Doug was awarded the Rockwell Collins Arthur A. Collins Engineer of the Year Award in 2004, as well as numerous other awards, too many to mention on this intro. Doug is a long-time, and when I say long-time, I mean well over 30 years, IPC chairman, and was awarded the IPC's Hall of Fame Award in 2017. Most notably, he is known for his expertise in surface insulation resistance testing, cleaning and cleanliness assessment, conformal coatings, and how to investigate and qualify manufacturing processes. He's been a U.S. representative to ISO and IEC working groups on SIR, surface insulation resistance, electromigration, and cleanliness reliability standards. He's participated in numerous national and international consortia on electronics manufacturing materials and processes. He recently led a team of subject matter experts to redefine the cleanliness provisions of J Standard 001, resulting in what is presently J Standard 001H. To take liberties with the famous Mark Twain quote, "Rumors of my retirement have been greatly exaggerated. For several years now, I've heard rumors of Doug Pauls' retirement. Well, today, it's finally come." I'll talk to Doug Pauls about his long career within the electronic assembly industry. We'll talk about his triumphs and challenges and his journey in this ever-changing, dynamic, and challenging industry. If you're new to this industry, stick around because I plan on asking Doug for his advice to young people entering our world, the world of electronic assembly. I'll be back with Doug and his unique and entertaining storytelling style when I return in just a moment. Stick around. This is going to be good.
Welcome to Reliability Matters, a podcast for the electronic assembly industry. Each episode covers topics related to reliability, best practices, and environmentally responsible assembly techniques, with insights from experts across the electronic assembly industry. Now, here's your host, Mike Conrad.
Hey, Doug. Welcome.
Hello, Mike.
Always good to see your face. Usually in pixel form, even better if it's in person, but most commonly in pixel form. Thanks for agreeing to be my guest today. And we're taking you off the technical hook today. We're not going to dive down any super deep technical rabbit holes today. And today, we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your career. We're going to talk about your accomplishments. We're going to try and pry some advice out of you. But before we do that, we've covered your career a little bit in the intro. It's hard to summarize, 30 plus years in a 3-minute intro. But I was originally planning on asking you to just describe your career and in your own words. And in true Doug Pauls fashion, you've created a presentation which will do exactly that. So that's even better. So for those of you who are listening to this podcast in your car or on the treadmill or Lord knows where you might be listening to it from, if you feel a little FOMO, a little fear of missing out, you may want to, when you get home or when you get to your office, maybe jump on the YouTube channel, the Reliability Matters YouTube channel, so you could see everything that Doug is talking about. Now, Doug is really good at explaining things, so I don't think it's absolutely mandatory, but I think you'll get a lot more out of at least this part of this episode if you can also view the presentation. So just go on YouTube, search Reliability Matters if you're not already a subscriber. This is episode number 143. And you'll be able to see what I am about to see, and we'll bring it up on the screen right now. So, Doug, tell me about your journey from the beginnings to where we are today.
Okay, I would be happy to. And I was, in preparing for this, I was kind of thinking, what should I talk about? Mike, you and I share a passion for teaching. I love the webinars and so on that you do. I find them entertaining and educational. And there's always points and so on that can be learned, can be passed on. So in thinking about my career, what are the points that I would like to give to somebody who might just be starting out, people who are early in their career? What might I provide to them that would be of value? So, as you said, because not everyone might be aware of who I am, let me start off a little bit about who I am as an individual, as a person. So, first of all, I was born and raised in a small farming community just west of Madison, Wisconsin. So I am an avid Badger, a Packer football fan, and Mike, I can milk a cow.
Wow.
My first job after college took me down to Indianapolis, where I met and married my lovely wife, Sue. We are coming up on our 38th wedding anniversary. I'm pretty proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have 3 adult children, Laura and her husband, Nate, and my sons, David and Eric. Now, I have a grandson, Callahan. And the old saw about if I had known how much fun grandchildren were, I would have had them first. Oh, that's very much the case. So here is my favorite picture from this last Christmas. We grandpas have a stern duty to educate the young, and this is me teaching Callahan how to properly nap. Very, very important.
A life skill indeed.
Indeed. So people have asked me from time to time, Doug, what was your greatest accomplishment? What things are you most proud of? And I would say probably number one on the list that I've been a good husband and a good father, and I hope a good grandpa. No,
well, I don't see Callahan complaining.
No, he loves Papa, and hopefully I'll get to see him over this weekend as well. So in thinking about how do we develop as a person, how can we be the best person that we can be? I think it's very important that we volunteer our time and our talent outside of the home and outside of work. I think it makes you a better person. I think it's oftentimes a great stress reliever. Now, as part of that, I've been a leader in the Freemason fraternity, attaining the 33rd degree, which is pretty significant. For many years, I was a Cub Scout and Boy Scout leader. That was for about 18 years, 10 of that as a Scoutmaster. And let me tell you, that will teach you patience if nothing else does. Now, my dad taught me as a boy, as a young man, a lot of carpentry skills. And so I take those carpentry skills and some of my woodworking talents, and I volunteer my time at Habitat for Humanity. And I love doing that. I also love to cook. I've been the cook in our home for all of our married life. And so several times a year, I volunteer at our church making meals for the homeless and those who are struggling with hunger. I will tell you, Mike, I make one heck of a meatloaf.
Nice.
So I think that's really the first point that I would make. What you are and what you do outside of work is just as important as what you do inside of work. Now, when I'm not doing those things, I'm woodworking. Now, if you don't have a hobby, if you don't have something that allows you to disconnect, if you're just going to work in the morning and you're working 10 or 11 hours a day and you're coming home and you don't have anything else to do, it's not a question of if you will go nuts. It's a question of when you will go nuts.
Yeah.
And so for me, woodworking, my maternal grandfather was a clockmaker in his retirement and taught me a lot of those skills. So I love doing a lot of woodworking. About 35 years ago, I started to do a style of carving called chip carving. And this is a picture of the wedding chest that I carved for my daughter Laura. The lighter colored wood that you see is basswood, a favorite of carvers. The lid that you see here is their family tree, carved out to 4 generations. It's about 500 hours of carving in that chest. So that's probably my masterpiece. And that is also, it's a very useful hobby, practical one. I make a lot of gifts, especially, gifts for wedding. And I will say to those listeners in the audience, if you are ever stumped for a truly unique wedding present you'd like to give, I do commissions. All right, Mike, that is the only commercial I will do.
You heard it here first. And if you call now, we'll double your order. And something tells me Callahan, 60 or 70 years from now, if he's ever interviewed, he'll say something that you said, and that, his grandfather taught him woodworking.
I am hoping so. I've got a full woodworking shop, and I really look forward to the day that I can start working with him there.
I'm going to count his fingers. He has 10 fingers right now, I assume. We want to make sure that by the time he still has 10. Okay, good.
I got all 10.
You never want to learn woodworking from, this guy. The 9-fingered guy, right?
And one other thing that I started doing, I don't know, about 10 or 11 years ago, that both my evil twin brother, Dave Hillman, and I have mentored a large number of engineering co-op students. Between the two of us, it's been about 150 of them. And we have always referred to our co-ops as our minions. They're part of our plans for world domination. It's only a matter of time.
Your diabolical plan. That's
correct. Well, when the movie Despicable Me came out and the Minions movie, well, that took a whole new meaning to all of this. And so at that point, I had the Minions pick out a Minion avatar, and I would carve that into some basswood as a memento of their time here. So it's a lot of fun. But that's the importance of having a hobby, doing something otherwise. And I love working with my hands. So I was thinking about the journey. And my journey is, it'll be 40 years this August. How would I tell others about my journey? And the best way that I can think to do it is liken this to a toolbox. Now, I had a professor in college that told me college only teaches you about 25% of what you need to know, but it gives you the tools to understand what you'll be taught in the industry. And I have certainly found this to be the case. And so, we graduate from college, we got a few screwdrivers, a couple wrenches, maybe a hammer. But we need then to expand that. If you take a look at this picture, If you are a woodworker, you should probably recognize this immediately as the tool chest of A.O. Studley. Now, A.O. Studley was a shipwright in the 1800s, and this is his tool chest. Fully loaded, that chest weighs 200 pounds when it's full. But it's a marvel of fitting a huge number of tools into a compact area. And so this might be analogous to what a technical fellow would be, some of our senior subject matter experts. We've spent most of our career filling our toolbox with the tools of our trade. And so let's kind of take a look at how did I fill my toolbox along the way, and then maybe talk to where might some of our listeners find their tools. So I'm going to actually go back talking about where my tools came from, and I'm going to go back to sixth grade. People have asked me a lot of times, Doug, you're a very accomplished speaker. How did you become such an accomplished speaker? And I know, Mike, you're much the same way. I'm actually going to go back to sixth grade. I was a painfully shy child when I was very young. People who know me now never believe that, but that was the case. And let's just say, against my will, my mom signed me up for the local theater. And it terrified me at first, but I found that I liked it. I found that applause is a lot like a narcotic. You gotta have just a little bit more. Now, the thing about theater is it teaches you how to move on stage with purpose. It tells you what to do with your hands. It tells you how to modulate your voice, to enunciate, to project your voice. All very important things if you're doing public speaking. And so I've done a number of theater productions throughout my life, loved them all. Now, if that's not your thing, I've also taken the Dale Carnegie public speaking course, and it is excellent. I highly recommend it. And if that's not an option, there is an organization called Toastmasters. They have a lot of chapters throughout the U.S. They do an excellent job for that. They can help you be an excellent public speaker. So when I got into college, there were a number of jobs that I worked on the side. Plastic Ingenuity is a plastic thermoforming factory in a small town near where I grew up. And right now, I have two brother-in-laws that work there. My niece is the director of quality, and I have another niece and nephew serving as leaders there as well. So that company is pretty important to our family. So I picked parts on the line for 2 summers and then moved into the machine shop. Now, that job taught me a number of things. The first being is that what the people in the front office think is going on in the factory and what is really going on in the factory are often two completely different things. And if you want to know what happens in the factory, get off your butt, get out of the office, and go take a walk through the factory. I think I drove the foreman nuts in that I always was asking questions about the process. Well, how do you make that process consistent? How do you know the product that we're making today is the same as the product that we made last week? How do you know good from bad? What differentiates good quality from bad quality? And so asking a lot of questions taught me a lot about the process itself and what to look for. So that was perhaps a teaching point. Ask lots of questions.
Now, Doug, you were talking about walking around. I think that advice is super good for people wanting to learn. I think our managers and our bosses could learn from that. I went to, during my career, I took some courses on management And I think the only thing I remember from it was an acronym, MBWA, Management by Walking Around, because so many managers manage from their office suite on the top floor. And it's amazing what you learn when you just walk around and listen and observe, right? I think they become better managers. Yeah.
Yep. So then when I moved into the machine shop there, when I started to make the molds for plastic thermoforming, I got to work with a lot of skilled machinists. And what that did is it gave me a deep and abiding respect for the skilled trades. And I have found, sometimes we as engineers can sometimes have a touch of arrogance that we think we know it all. But I will tell you that many of the critical lessons that I've learned in my time in the industry, I've learned from our skilled tradespeople, from the operators and the technicians on the line. So that would be another point of advice. Craft and cultivate a relationship with those people, and they will teach you a great deal. Now, as we had, before we started this, Mike and you and I were talking, and we both share. We started at McDonald's.
Yes.
And say what you want about McDonald's, but it teaches you a lot of stuff. It teaches you dealing with the public, your customer service skills. Did a lot of cooking. You see how McDonald's is very good about making sure that this hamburger is the same as that hamburger, and so on. The quality control is pretty good from that. And kind of tongue in cheek, dealing with drunk people at 2 a.m. sometimes prepares you to work with upper management.
No truer words, Doug.
Present company accepted, of course.
Of course.
All right.
At least until the final check clears.
That's right. And so somewhere along that line, I ended up with a BA in chemistry and physics from Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I would have to say that I more escaped college than I did graduate from it. I was not the best of students. So I graduated college, and I went off to my first job. So I worked at the Naval Avionics Center, and I was a federal civil servant. Now, Naval Avionics was a prototype facility for the Department of the Navy, specifically NAVAIR. And they would make 1, 2, 3 of something and kind of make sure it worked. And then it would turn it over to a larger manufacturer for production. They made things like the guidance system for cruise missiles, and this was prior to GPS. Sonobuoys for detecting submarines, avionics for fighter jets. It was quite the facility, and I worked in the materials lab. And I was very fortunate in that. Say what you want about the federal system, but they don't short you on training opportunities. There was a wealth of training that was open to me. Now, in the materials lab, they had the same group of subject matter experts who had worked with each other for decades, but realized, hey, we're all going to be retiring in 5 or 6 years. We better get some young people in here and train them up. You talked a little bit before about the gray tsunami, and that's more important now than it ever has been. So I got to study under some of the best people that you could hope for. Bill Hobson and Bob Danoon, the originators of the ROSE test, the resistivity of solvent extract test, worked in that materials lab, and I got to study under them. I volunteered for all kinds of things there. At one point, I was a contract officer's technical representative, or COTAR. And once you start getting into the federal acquisition regulations and the defense federal acquisition regulations, the FARs and DFARs, you rapidly come to understand how you get $400 hammers and $1,000 toilet seats. It's the law. The work that we did in that lab really started my transformation from an electrical engineer to a materials scientist. I found that I really liked working with materials. What would they do? What would they not? How could you tell a good material from a bad material? At that same time, as I became more skilled in my area, I got to advise other people. Now, within the military, when they're making up major standards like Mil Standard 2000, you get together the category A's from the Navy, from the Army, from the Air Force, and so on, and they are the ones who speak for the services when you're making up those specs. And so I got to be the technical support for Gary Falconberry from Naval Avionics. And so I would go with him to some of the meetings all around the U.S. I know we were in Washington once where something had been proposed, and he had leaned over to me and said, "Doug, what do you think of that idea?" And I leaned back in and I said, "I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and there's no way in hell it would work." And that's when I found out I do not talk as softly as I thought I did.
That probably should have been inside voice, right?
Yes, it should have stayed in my head is where it should have stayed. So that taught me a lot as well. I was allowed the freedom to pick what area I wanted to become an expert in, what I could pursue. And surface insulation resistance kind of appealed to me at that time. And working with Hobson and Danoon, cleaning and cleanliness. So cleaning, cleanliness, rose testing, IC, that's where I got my start for some of that. Now, a couple of things that I would learn along the way and I would pass on to our listeners. One of the things that I started doing at the end of each year, my first mentor, Fred, was a wonderful guy. And he said, at the end of each year, sit down for a while and do a year-end summary. You know, what did you do this year? What were the major projects you worked on? What kind of training did you get? What sorts of things did you read? What activities were you involved in that helped better yourself? And the reason that I think everyone should do that, there are times that you go through your career in which you may be applying for a senior position. Certainly this was the case when I applied to become a fellow. Having this all documented, having all of this that I can go through, 5 years later, you go, oh, I forgot I did that. That becomes something that is very, very important, and however you wish to do that. I found that I think one of the things that really benefited me at my time at Naval Avionics, I asked questions. I asked lots of questions. At times, I was told I was a serious pest. But that's how you learn things. You ask questions. You find who in the facility knows more about it than you do, and go have breakfast with them. Go have lunch with them. A lot of times you have opportunities to try new things. Don't be afraid to try them. Now, you might come out of it and say, woof, this is something I am no good at, or this is something I definitely do not want to do for the rest of my career. And that's a valuable lesson to learn. I guess the one thing I would pass on as well, have lunch with the old guys. The people who have been around for a while are the people who can teach you the most. And it is amazing, in retrospect, it is amazing the amount of information that I learned from many of those simply by having lunch with them each day. And I found when I became the old guy at Collins here, and all of our young co-op students would be having lunch with me, they likewise said, Doug, this is where we learn a lot about life. A lot of the life skills, a lot of the, they call it adulting now. So take that opportunity and just work with them as much as possible. Now, I will say as well that in 1985, the fall of 85, I started in August of 84, but the following year, I became involved in IPC. And if you're not familiar with it, that is a trade association and standards development organization for electronics manufacturing. So I wanted to take a moment and talk about that. Because if I had to pick the single greatest factor in my career, the single greatest source of education, it would be the IPC. And a little bit later on, the SMTA, the Surface Mount Technology Association. And I know, Mike, you're a big leader in that organization as well. But my first IPC meeting, I went with Susan Mansilla of our facility, and Susan was already recognized in the industry. She had taken a leadership position. And while not a very large woman, it's like a tornado. She was a force of nature. So it was all throughout that week of IPC. Paul's, come here. Okay, you have to be in this committee, and why? You need to be in this committee, and this person is somebody you need to know, and this is somebody you need to know. Don't listen to these people. They're full of crap. But she really got me integrated into a lot of the IPC activities. And I greatly benefited from all of that. I learned more in 1 week than I had for years prior. It's an excellent training ground. Now, I've been asked this question throughout my career, and almost always it's around budget time. Why are we spending money to send you to the IPC? So, well, I have to say, it's a great training ground. It's a training ground for me. It's a training ground for the next generation. Where are you going to find the experts these days? Well, that's where you find the experts. And in participating in a lot of the standards development activities, you come to find out who are the people that you should listen to, and sometimes who don't you listen to. You often find out the difference between a technical point, something that if you don't do it right, the assembly doesn't work, and those that are business points. We want the spec to read it this way because this is how we choose to do business. And if you've ever sat through a J Standard 1 meeting, you know exactly what I'm talking about. By participating,
I call it the
yes.
Every country heard from scenario, where
yes,
all interests, not just technical, they all filter in to a standard.
Yep. And because the rules of standard development says everyone has a voice, mm-hmm. and everyone has to be answered, that's necessary part of the standards development process. Yes. Oftentimes, people have said, well, why participate in standards development? Well, that often gives you a heads up on what the standard will be long before your competition sees it when it's first published. And if you understand what the meaning of the spec is, not just the letter of the spec, it often helps you interpret things properly. I will say that the IPC and SMTA have put a tremendous amount of resources into education. You know, with all of us old people retiring, there are not enough people to take our place. The electronics industry continues to grow. So if you're looking to pick an industry where you have guaranteed work, electronic assembly is one of it. But they have a lot of things, IPC Edge. I know there are training programs in SMTA that are available to members, and they're very well done. I have told people in the past, you know, if you're not driving the bus, you're being taken for the ride. And so I have always said that the reason that Collins Aerospace has so many people participating in the standards, it is often very beneficial to us to have the industry definition of quality and acceptability consistent with the Collins definitions of quality and consistency. It's helped us out in a number of cases. And having yourself recognized as an industry subject matter expert helps you win a lot of customer arguments. And one thing in here as well is the networking. Networking is such a powerful thing, Mike, and you certainly know this. But I have to tell you a story. We're in a J Standard 1 meeting several years back. My evil twin brother, Dave Hillman, is sitting next to me. And a technical argument was going on. Dave is looking at his laptop. I'm looking at my laptop. And Dave is in the past going, oh my God. And I looked over at him, and he looked at me and whispered, check your email. And I opened up my email. I looked at it. Oh my God. Well, one of our customers had a senior VP who had decreed that all electronics delivered to them would now be coated with Parylene. Now, Parylene is an excellent coating, don't get me wrong, but it's god-awful expensive and would have dramatically screwed up manufacturing for quite some time. Well, sitting to the other side of me was that company's, one of their technical fellows. And I leaned over and showed her the email, and she looked at it and going, what is that idiot doing? Hang on, I'll take care of this. She got up, walked out into the hall to make a phone call, and about an hour and a half later, another email came through and said that directive has been called back.
Wow.
And so we were able to essentially shortcut, because of our network, in a few minutes what we would have spent weeks or months fighting conventionally. So that networking is very, very important.
And that speaks to the power of the standing one has when they're involved in the technical committees. Their voice is louder. There's a higher respect level for what they're saying than someone else that's maybe not involved in the standards.
Yeah. Well, now I have to tell another story. That's one of the hazards our co-op students will tell you of working with me. You get stuck in old guy stories. We had a customer. We had a big disagreement with one of our customers, and the customer brought in their experts. And so we were in the lab and we were discussing some of this. And Dave Hillman and I were standing there, and they wanted to know if either of us knew anything about flux or flux residues. To our credit, we kept a straight face, and we said yes. And the arguments went on for a while. Suddenly, one of them took a look at my security badge and took a closer look, and took a look at Dave's badge, and he said, "Are you the Doug Pauls and Dave Hillman that are leaders in the IPC? And we just smiled and said, yes. And he said, oh, crap. And his colleagues looked at him and said, what? Said, these two guys wrote the book on it.
Right.
Said, there's no way we're ever going to win this argument.
Right.
So
they cried uncle
it was,
at that point.
Yes. It was very much it was useful to be seen and known as a subject matter expert in that. Having led a number of committees and task groups over the years, that teaches you some very valuable skills as well. Sometimes leading a task group, especially if there are a lot of differing viewpoints and so on, it's a lot like herding cats. And I will tell you, as a leader, cat herding skills are very valuable. They're very useful. You learn how to deal with strong personalities. You learn how to do consensus building, which is very, very important to get to the best solution. And I will say, from a lot of my early years in IPC, I got exposed to some fantastic leaders, giants in the industry: Roger Landolt, John Wariold, Joe Felty, Les Himes, and all of those had dramatically different leadership styles. They had dramatically different ways of approaching a problem. And I got to learn from all of those. And all of those people, without fail, were all the pay it forward type of people. They were very generous in their knowledge. They were very generous in letting you know their experiences so that you could better yourself. And I have tried to be much the same way following their lead. So IPC and SMTA, if you're not part of it, you should be.
That's going to be reduced down to an episode on its own. That's a great statement. And I totally agree. We work in an industry, we're kind of blessed to work in an industry that is as collaborative as it is. And the interesting thing is, we all go to these meetings. Many of us are involved in standards meetings, but we're all involved in conferences and expos and things like that. And we're a field of rivals in many cases. Yet, I attend and speak at a lot of conferences, as you do, and it's amazing to me to see Company A and their nemesis Company B all educating the entire industry. And and for that moment in time, anyway, brief moment in time, they're not competitors, they're colleagues. And that, I think I don't know if that's unique to our industry, because I don't have the luxury of being involved in really any other industries. I've been here 38 years, so I was a kid before that, so I really didn't gain that perspective. But I believe it's probably maybe not unique, but maybe rare, that industries as competitive as the electronics industries, as the electronics industry is also highly collaborative, because it does, you figure out a way to heat the pool, everyone gets warmer, right? So and what we give, we take. So I think it has a way of balancing it all out.
I agree.
And you're missing so much if you're not part of that. I spent the first few years in my immersion into this industry. I was an outsider. I didn't belong. I had suffered great imposter syndrome. I didn't think I belonged here. And I'm like, I don't know how I ended up here, but I'm just going to keep cashing my check until they figure it out. And so I didn't network a lot. I didn't attend conferences. I was just so busy just trying to learn my skill level. And I didn't really see the value in this collaborative networking and co-learning and all that until later in my career. And, my only regret is I didn't learn that sooner and get up to whatever level I happened to be up to sooner in my career. And I would have been far more productive. I would have been a better teacher. I would have taught more people. I would have learned more, all of that.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree. So after 9 years at Naval Avionics, they wanted to move me out of the lab and make me a project manager. And it was kind of like, well, over my dead body. I did not want to do that. About that same time, my friend and colleague Terry Munson had, in the year previous, established his own company, Contamination Studies Laboratories, which is now Foresight. And I went from being a federal civil servant, in a talent pool of millions, down to a small company. I don't think we were ever more than 12 people. What a culture shock that was. Now, when you go to being in a small company, you wear a lot of hats. And I was technical director there. We took Terry's knowledge of ion chromatography, my knowledge of SIR, my ability to do technical writing, made for a very powerful force. And so what that company did was often forensic analysis. Why were things failing electrochemically? Why were things corroding? Why do we get dendritic growth? Why does things go screwy every time it gets humid? And so we became very adept at using those tools to track down a problem. I will tell you, Mike, I think I got to see every conceivable way to make something wrong as part of that. And that's a valuable thing. I don't know what the right way is, but I know that won't work. So, we got to work from everything from mom and pop shops to major manufacturers, and we got to develop those tools. I got to understand ion chromatography, how it worked, what it could be used for. We took SIR testing, we developed new test boards, new approaches, new ways to use it, expanding that tool set. And it was a tremendous learning experience. And Foresight now is, they must be up to, it was 92. So almost, 30 years of that type of work. They're very, very good at it. But you learn skills like how to do true root cause analysis, not just stopping at either the apparent cause or the convenient cause, but what is really causing the problem. And that's an invaluable skill. Working with customers helps you develop your diplomatic skills, because as a consultant, you can't say things like, that's got to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen. What idiot came up with this? You can't say things like that. You have to say things like, well, that's an interesting approach. I don't think I've ever seen people use that. What led you down this particular path? So that helps to sharpen some of your skills. And when you start to educate your customers, all right, here's what your problem is. Here's how you got here. Here's how you fix it. Here's how you make sure that it doesn't happen again. There's a lot of education to that. And I really like teaching. And so I started to put together a lot of training seminars, a lot of classes and so on that I had at IPC. And that was another tool. I continued to advance in a lot of the IPC committees during that time. I became a monthly columnist for Circuits Assembly magazine, and I did that for 4 years. And trying to summarize a complex analysis in less than 500 words, that's sometimes a challenge. And I got one patent while I was there, but a whole lot of publications, which came in very handy when I came to apply for technical fellow at Collins. So after about 8 years there, I said, okay, it's time for something new. It's time for the next stage in my career. Then I had called up, as I keep calling him, my evil twin brother, Dave. I called him up and said, Dave, by any chance, is Rockwell Collins hiring? And he said, man, it is really weird that you called today. Just yesterday, our chemical engineer, Roger Scheel, announced he was leaving the company to go move and be closer to his family. You'd be perfect for his job. So essentially, I got to interview for the job before it became available. And it has turned out to be an excellent match for me. Collins has been very supportive in all of the work that I've done in IPC. What I did at Collins, I took all of those tools. My toolbox had grown to be pretty good size by this time. And all of those things that I did at CSL, I now brought that capability to Collins. Established both an IC lab and an SIR lab there, also one for conformal coatings. And we started to use these tools to look at everything and how to make them better, how to make them more consistent. How do we use these tools for something that I call witch hunts? Witch being an acronym for what is this crap here? Stuff would come back from the field.
I love your style of terms.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that one into T50, and I don't think they'll let me.
The word crap might, I don't know.
Well, it could be compound. What is this compound here to make it more polite?
Well, I guess crap is a compound.
Yeah, true enough. So a lot of work over the course of, I'm there now 24 years, and have been recognized there a number of ways. But I essentially have become the cleaning and coating guru for now all of Collins Aerospace. While I was at Rockwell Collins, I became general chairman of the cleaning and coating committees. I ran all of them, and I chaired the technical activities executive committee for 2 years as part of that. You had said in the introduction, we helped rewrite Section 8 of J Standard 1, kind of mixed reviews on that one, I think. We modernized the conformal coat specification, CC 830, and all of the work that I had done over the years was recognized. I was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2017, and then I was elected fellow. 2024 is not correct. It was back in 2021. And so that's been the last 3 years, using those same tools to help improve our manufacturing. Now, for those who are listening in, I might say, when you're thinking about your career and how do you want to chart your future? How do you want to chart the path? This is how Collins Aerospace takes a look at their fellow applicants. There are these 4 pillars that they look at. Their technical expertise. Are they a technical expert in their area? If so, how do you know that? So if you're thinking about what skills do you want to become an expert at, and how do you get all of those tools? Who do you talk with? What courses and so on, so that you can sharpen your expertise? How have you demonstrated that technical expertise to show leadership in your company? How have you taken something new and, saved money, saved time, improved reliability, improved quality? Keep track of that as you go throughout your career. You should be doing innovation, not just doing the same thing day after day. There's always a better way to do something. Maybe not cheaper, but there are always new things to try. And so be thinking about how you can innovate. And then mentoring and teaching. Everyone who is a senior leader at Collins is also expected to be a mentor and teacher to others. I had said before that I was a Boy Scout leader, a Scoutmaster. And any Scout, it's a requirement as an older Scout that you teach skills to the younger Scouts, the new ones coming into the troop, how to do knots and so on, all of the wilderness skills. Because the best way to really learn something is to teach it to somebody else. And so it also helps to pass along your skills, to get the next generation ready for that. And when our fellows committee takes a look at it, they look at, well, what have they done at the local level? What have they done at the business level? What are they doing at the enterprise level, the next one up? And more importantly, what are they doing in the industry? All of these things, if you can say, yes, I've done all of these things, I've accomplished these things, you've made it. You are a fellow. And, I had talked before about doing your year-end summary. When you apply to be a fellow, it is a long process. It is a summary of your career. And if I would not have had those summaries to draw upon, it would have been a much more difficult task. So be thinking about those 4 areas as you start to think of, what do I want to do? How do I want to grow? So if you're trying to think, well, how do I become a technical expert in X? Where do I find the resources for X? And this is where you find them. I had said before, IPC and SMTA. IPC has a listserv called TechNet, which gives you access to a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience in the industry. It is not quite as much fun since Dave Hillman retired and we don't have the Friday Element quiz anymore, but it's still an excellent tool. As I've said before, participating in the task groups, the standards development work, all of those are very important for your education, and it shows you who you can work with to become an expert. One of the things that I really love about the SMTA is they do a bang-up job helping the young professionals develop. They do a fantastic job. The SMTA also has a lot of chapters around the U.S. There is not one here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but there's, I think, one in Milwaukee, one in Minneapolis. There's one in St. Louis. I think there's one in Kansas City, all within driving distance of here. Both IPC and SMTA have online searchable databases for technical papers in your area. There are a lot of other organizations who are set up to help you succeed. APQC that you see there has a lot of Lean Six Sigma type of tools and are often available. Your company may already be a member of that and you just don't know it. There is a lot of specialized training that is out there, a lot of e-learning. If one good thing came out of COVID is that a lot of things are now available online that were not before.
Yeah.
Instrument manufacturers will often have more in-depth training sessions for their equipment that they will offer. There are boot camps and so on. Mike, do you still offer your boot camp?
Yeah, the cleaning and cleanliness quantification boot camp. Yeah, that's still out there.
An excellent course.
Thank you.
Coming
from you, thank you very much.
Well, I guess that's another commercial. I lied earlier.
That's all right. We'll allow that one to sneak through.
There we go. Most companies in the quality department, the quality training, Lean Six Sigma tools, statistical design of experiments. There are tools there if you only go looking for them and seek them out. There are a lot of industry webinars and workshops that are out there. I know, Mike, you do one at least every month. I find them excellent.
Thank you.
Kaizen and Zestron, manufacturers of cleaning chemicals, regularly host things on cleaning and how to do a better job on cleaning. Dow Corning also occasionally does things like that. There are countless newsletters in the industry to help keep you up on stuff. Barb Koenigsberg from BFK Solutions has a regular newsletter that goes out, and that is a very good newsletter from the standpoint she's very, very in tune with the regulations.
Yeah.
So if you want to see how the EPA is going to mess you up next, that's a really good one to have. Can you tell what I've been working on a lot the last couple of years?
I think you're in the regulation world right now.
Oh, God.
Well, the basic rule of EPA or air quality management districts is if it works well, basic rule in life, if it tastes good or works well, it's either fattening or illegal. That's the way it is.
Yeah. If a chemical is effective, there's got to be a law against it.
It's going to go. Yeah. It's on a list. Yeah, for sure.
So there are conferences and so on that you can go to. SMTAI each fall, fantastic papers. SMTA in Europe sponsors a harsh environments conference, usually in the late springtime.
Yep.
IPC Apex, which is this April, probably one of the premier events from our industry. And both Mike and I and Mike Bixaman, we have professional development workshops that we teach as part of those. And both Mike and I are on the planning committee for the Cleaning and Coating Conference, which is held every other year. And 2025 will be the next one.
Yep.
There are training courses that are available through LinkedIn. There's a lot of very interesting information out there on YouTube. Just be very cautious on that. I've lost entire weekends to YouTube.
Yeah, we've all been sucked down that rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah. Collaboration. People sometimes wonder, well, when you're a technical fellow, how do you get better? Well, you get better by collaborating with your other peers. One of the things that I'm working with now, Bill Capon. Sure. Down in Kansas City. Yep. Fantastic guy. And I learn a lot from him every time we talk. So collaboration is one way to really help you get better. Now, that last one, Mike, I'm going to ask, you ever seen that acronym?
Okay, you're going to make me put on my old man glasses here because I can't read my teleprompter from here. BOGDS.
Yes.
No, something tells me that's a Dougism. I'm just guessing it's a Dougism.
It stands for Buy Old Guys Drinks.
I full well endorse that acronym, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, it's long been my belief that you get more done and learn more in the bar over drinks after the spec meetings than you ever get accomplished in the meetings itself.
I call
that's part of the networking
foxhole
thing.
Stories. The downside to that is you do hear the same stories over and over again because we forget we've already told them, but they are so valuable. I totally agree. Surround yourself with experienced people, old sages, and it's amazing what you'll learn.
I have told all of our co-op students who have said the same thing, said, if I launch into an old guy story that you've heard before, it will not insult me if you raise your hand and go, heard it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Fair enough. Yes.
So that would kind of be kind of a summary of the journey, the tools I've developed, where I think the resources lie to help you improve. So I hope that has been beneficial for you.
It's been great. I
Yeah.
have pages of questions I was going to ask you, and you've pretty much answered almost all of them without even having to be asked. So kudos for Doug's insightfulness.
Thank you.
I do want to, as we're very quickly running out of time, I do want to end on just a couple of questions, kind of to your point earlier, pay it forward questions. The great retirement for which you are now part of.
April 30th.
And to a great deal, or at least to half a deal, I'm part of, semi-retired, although I find myself busier in retirement than I do I did before. That's typical. Our jobs are very slowly being replaced, or the people count is very slowly being replaced with new people. And typically those are younger people, not always, but typically those are younger people. For someone who is new to this industry, maybe not really settled on where in this industry they want to stay, or for someone who's considering joining our industry, what are the greatest, from your vantage point, through your lens, what are the greatest opportunities within our industry? What recommendations would you give to for them to pursue specific types of jobs within the industry? Where do we need people the most, and what provides the most value, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a tough one. I will say that because almost my entire career has been focused on the factory, making factory better. How do you make stuff? I have long held at Collins and other places as well that our products would become so much better if our designers had to build the first 5 units that they designed. To get into the factory, to understand how things are made. What constitutes a good design practice or not? A lot of our engineers go into the design world and they don't ever see the factory. And a lot of problems come from that. Electronics manufacturing, I will tell you, Collins is, they call it the war on talent. We are looking for bright young engineers, and we're finding as many as we can, but a lot of us are retiring out of the factories, and the manufacturing, after having dropped down during COVID, is starting to come back. It's fierce, and we can't keep up with it. Mm-hmm. The IPC has a couple of activities trying to sponsor excitement, encouragement at both the high school and the college level to encourage people to get into the electronics manufacturing realm. I will say it's a guaranteed job. I have found it to be very, very worthwhile, very industry, very interesting. I think of this, Mike, in one of your presentations, you show on one side your Mustang, 1968.
That's right. Yeah, 68.
I got it right.
You got it right.
1968 Mustang with one circuit assembly.
Right.
Versus a more modern vehicle that's got hundreds of them all throughout the car. We're looking at wearable electronics. Everything is getting smaller. Everything is getting more compact. Lives depend upon reliable electronics. So it is certainly something you can go as far and do whatever you'd like. But everyone who has a good knowledge of how things are manufactured, they become better systems engineers, they become better designers. So that would be my recommendation of where to start.
Good recommendation. Final question, Doug. your evil twin, Doug Hillman,
Yes.
when he retired, he jumped in a kayak and paddled. I said rowed when I would talk to him, and he goes, "No, you don't row a kayak, you paddle a kayak." I'm like, "Okay."
Paddle a kayak.
I learned from the show, just for the record. When he paddled his kayak 3,600 miles down the entire U.S. length of the Missouri River, that was his parting gift to himself. That's one of his bucket list things. Which river are you going to paddle, or which mountain are you going to climb? What's your version of that?
If I did that, you'd be seeing the notice for my funeral.
Yeah, me too. Me too. By the way,
Well,
I lived through Dave. Yeah, I don't need
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah,
Yeah, I vicariously lived through Dave throughout that journey as well. May is going to be taken off largely at the insistence of my wife. Early June has trips to Texas, family related. And then Sue and I are taking a trip to Alaska and a cruise back down the Inner Passage, kind of to celebrate the retirement. But I've spent 40 years building that toolbox. I can't just set it aside. I can't go cold turkey.
that was my next question. Are we going to see you
There are
back?
so many people out there who I could benefit. You know, when I was at CSL helping all of those companies, that is a fantastic feeling. When you know that you've taken your knowledge and your expertise to help a company that really needs it, I don't think there's anything more satisfying than that. And so I will no doubt be consulting. I still am, I turned 65 in April, but I can do what I want at that point. But that's something that I would like to do. Now, whether I do it as, a consultant on my own or through, a different company, we're still working out some of the details from that. But I will still be available. I'll still be attending conferences. I'm still as close as a phone to many people.
Excellent. And that gives me hope that this is not our last official Reliability Matters conversation. We will see you back here in one form or another. I don't know what badge you'll be wearing, but or what will be printed on your business card, but something tells me you're not going away.
No, not anytime soon.
Good. Our industry is better off for that. Doug Pauls, thank you so much for being my guest today. And even more importantly, thank you so much. I've learned so much from you. I knew what I knew. I thought I knew everything. And then I met you and you rained on my parade. It's like, oh man, I don't know crap, So I've learned from you, and the entire industry has. And if, maybe too late now, but if you do end up somehow back on the speaking circuit, if you haven't seen Doug, and particularly his evil twin, Dave, give a presentation, it is not your typical industry presentation. It is not dull. It is funny. It's absolutely.
We're both nuts.
You're both certifiable, absolutely.
Yes.
And if you get a kick out of dad humor, that might just turn half the people off. But if you love dad humor, go see Doug or Dave, because that's you guys, and you bring it to the next level, which is so welcome in this industry where the information can sometimes be very dry and very technical and one might say even boring, valuable, but boring format. Yours is never boring, and it is always valuable. So thank
you very much.
Everything you've done for the industry. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for being my mentor, whether you realize it or not. And I really appreciate the time we get to spend together, and I look forward to seeing you. Will you be at Apex? Will they let you go on your last weeks? Yep. Okay, excellent. So I will see you in Anaheim.
I am there because one of my former minions, Charmaine, has hired into our group a couple of weeks ago, and I have the task of transferring 40 years of knowledge in 3 months.
Excellent.
To her. So she will be with me as I kind of do as Susan Mansilla did for me. You need to be in this committee. You need to be in this committee. These are the people that you listen to. Those people are full of crap. just like Susan did for me. So I will be doing that for her as well. But yes, I will be at IPC.
It's the circle of life, right? What you received, you pass on. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. It's always great to see you. And I don't need to tell you this, but good luck in your retirement. And I'll put retirement in air quotes. You may not be getting paid from the normal source, but we will look forward to seeing you around.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, that's another episode. Thanks for listening to or watching the Reliability Matters podcast. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Reliability Matters on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching this podcast on the Reliability Matters YouTube channel, be sure to click the like, subscribe, and bell icons to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. A special thank you to Circuit Assembly Magazine's PCB Chat at pcbchat.com and Ascendo Reliability at reliability.fm for syndicating this show. Thanks also for your questions and episode suggestions. Please keep them coming. I love to hear from you. Send comments or episode suggestions or questions to mike@mikeconrad.com. Just remember, that's Conrad with a K. Once again, thanks for listening or watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and perhaps most importantly, keep doing it right. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.